Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
Boker Tov. Shabbat Shalom from New York. It was good to get away this last weekend. Me, my wife, and my daughter, we traveled all the way to the East Coast. That's a lot of schlepping, and then I got in town, we got to rent a car, and I slept some more. And I slept and slept all the way to Long Island, back to down to Jersey, actually New York City, and downtown Manhattan, and back to Long Island, then down to New Jersey, and Vineland, New Jersey, all my wife's family in the two locations, and it was an amazing, amazing time. I'll share some more about it. We are excited about getting into Tetse, and this portion of the Torah, we're going to look at the right of the firstborn. Can you say that with me? The right of the firstborn. We say a Shabbat Shalom to everyone today. Bruchim Habaim. Welcome, welcome. We thank you for you that have come. And Baruch haba b'shem Adonai, blessed he who's come in the name of the Lord. You have come today. Bruchim Habaim. Welcome to all of you. So let's give it up to our first-time guests and those returning family members. And maybe even for your rabbi returning from New York, right? Yeah. So good to be back. Yeah. And we are looking at the Torah reading today that is found in Parashat Tetse, which starts with Deuteronomy 21:10 through 25:19. See the little baby here? And reminds me of the parents of Yeshua bringing him and dedicating him, but they're bringing him to the rabbi. We see here Isaiah, the prophet, is again our prophet of consolation, and Isaiah 54:1 through 10. And then 1 Corinthians 5:1 through 5 actually was a great reading to correlate to the Torah and the prophets today. All right, you ready for 10 minutes of Torah?
Yeah.
I don't believe you today. You ready for 10 minutes of Torah?
Yeah.
I got a chance and a privilege to speak last week. I had no intention of going to New York and speaking anywhere. I was going to rest. And I called my friend because we were lost in downtown Manhattan trying to understand all those one-way streets. And I called my dear friend Benzi. And Benzi Halevi, he's a rabbi, a Messianic rabbi in downtown Manhattan. And he has a congregation that I'll share in just a minute with you, the name. And I just called him just to say hello. He goes, "You're here in New York?" I said, "Yeah." So I sent him a picture of our GPS, took a little snapshot of it. And he goes, "You're like around the corner from me." And I said, he goes, "Yeah, I'm kind of doing something right now, but maybe in a couple hours." I said, No, you don't do a thing. I just want to say hello, let you know I'm in your town. Maybe in the next couple of days we'll hook up. He goes, well, tomorrow's Shabbat, so you're going to come by the shul then, aren't you? And I said, well, yeah, actually, we were thinking about that. I want to see how far away we are so we can see in timing if we can make it to your synagogue. And he goes, "Oh, well, if you're coming, then you're going to speak tomorrow." And I said, he says, "Unless it's too much for you." And I said, wait a minute. I was told, be in season, out of season, nothing's too much for me. So I'm going to go ahead and take the challenge. And here I am with a little bit hard to see on this picture here, but there's a picture of me at the Bima with the Torah scrolls covered right there, the Bima, with, notice the title of my PowerPoint that says, "The seeds you sow are the fruits you grow." So the reason it was able to be still a restful Shabbat was because I taught the congregation there what I taught you the last time I was with you. And that is from Parashat Re'eh. But I found a connection in Parashat Shoftim where it talks about the first fruits. So I was able to tie in the seeds you sow, the fruits you grow, with the same message, but I added a couple extra verses from that reading. So thank the Lord that I was able to hang out with my dear friend at his congregation, Tehilat Haderek, which is a Messianic Jewish synagogue in New York City, and it is the Congregation of the Way. And that's what believers were first called, followers of the Way. So here he is with his, a few years back with his beautiful family. His wife is Sephardic, and she is Hispanic. I think they're from Ecuador. And here he is on the left, and their beautiful child there, their son. And he's such a cute kid, but he's so pretty. He's like a little girl. It's just amazing how cute those lots are. I had to really check myself. Okay, he's wearing blue, so it's a boy. But he's such a cute kid, but he looks a lot like his mom. But that's just, I guess they luck out that way, right? And then, actually, here he is a little older. There we are at Aroma Cafe, which is an Israeli-owned Italian cafe. They have it in all over the world. I went to one in Australia. They're in Israel, and it's all kosher and Israeli food. Oh, it's absolutely amazing. So we're sitting down, I'm taking the picture. So here's Rabbi Benzi, his wife to the left, me and my wife are on this side, and my daughter, and there is their son, and they just, look at the little kippah. You don't see all the long curls and locks of hair in back. Fabio has nothing on him. And so, all of a sudden I go into his pictures on Facebook, and lo and behold, who do I find? A friend of ours. We have Rabbi Yeshua Reinhardt. And so he was just with them not too long ago as he was with us. And I said, see, we are mishpocha. We are family, aren't we? And so we're so grateful today. And look, it's the same table. The same exact table in aroma from a different angle. And look at the nice little American and Israeli flag kippah that the son is wearing. And just amazing. So my wife was able to see some of her family in New Jersey. I said Jersey, you know. I should call it Juicy because it's a lot of Jews over there, but, you know, Jersey. And so this is part of the family that is in Vineland, New Jersey. And it's so funny because her Aunt Jolie, Yolanda, they call her Jolie, Aunt Jolie here to the left, her husband here to my right, he just like latched on. And he was like, can you come speak at my congregation? We're going to have 500 men for a men's breakfast. Can you come speak? And I said, well, I'm going to be probably out of New York already. He goes, I need to talk to my pastor. I said, who's your pastor? Oh, we go to Calvary Chapel. And we have a huge congregation, and our pastor loves Israel.
Yeah.
And we have a group in Israel right now touring.
Yeah.
I said, really? Well, I said, you know, what are they into? Oh, you know, like, well, a lot of stuff on the end times is really popular right now. I said, well, you know what? Let me email you my teachings on the book of Revelation and see if your pastor's blessed and let me know. I might be back out. So I'm believing God that that's going to open up a great door to speak to their congregation. And my daughter had a blast. She was running around like crazy. And then, of course, we'd go back every day to a beautiful, beautiful state. I won't show you all the pictures. You will just be jealous of my sister-in-law's beautiful mansion of a house, 3-level house in Northport, Long Island. They're right by the water. The water is right here. You can't see from this picture, but you can just look right here. This is all water. And they're so close, they can walk to the beach, and we're on their deck right there, and here they are. They're just a great couple, and I'll give you a close-up of her in a minute. But here's my wife just totally enjoying herself. Look how relaxed Rabbitson looks. She's just enjoying herself. My daughter, her sister, and my brother-in-law's wife here, and we're just having a blast. And it was just so good to get away. And here's like a little collage of all of us just getting away in different avenues. And my daughter 3 years ago got a chance to see her younger cousins, and she just couldn't wait to get back. She could actually describe all of their rooms to a T. Daddy, when you go in, this one has this here and that here. She has every detail. I'm like, you need to be learning Torah. You know, with that kind of memory, you need to learn Torah and learn Hebrew. And so here she is having a class. Look at that smiling face. And this young man here, I tell you, I got a chance to pray with him. He has been battling a form of lymphatic cancer. And he's in remission right now, but we got a chance to pray with him, and we've just been believing God for him. This is my wife's father's youngest brother, and my father-in-law has passed away, you know, a few years ago, but which is why my mother-in-law lives with us. But it's amazing to see the family on this side of town. They're all believers. They love the Lord. And of course, I had to prove to them how Jewish they are. They're all Jews. And so, no, you think I'm kidding? I constantly always tell them, oh, you're Puerto Rican, you're Jewish, you know. So I'm looking, I'm having a great time with the family. My daughter couldn't keep her eyes open. She said, Daddy, it's so bright. It was like 5 a.m. in the morning when we were driving around trying to wait for stores to open up in downtown Manhattan. Everything's like opening up at 10 o'clock. And we're just schlepping around, tired, weary, worn out, a couple hours of sleep on the plane ride, but somehow Hashem gave us strength. Isn't that great to be able to just get away with family? Yeah. Can I show you the clincher of my trip? Yeah. The clincher, you ready for this? Yeah. I was able to bless my sister-in-law, Rogerlyn, in Long Island. She's a lawyer, her husband's a lawyer. She teaches Spanish at the university. She's no longer practicing law right now. She's battling lupus. And somehow she has supernatural strength. She can't have children, but she adopted a Korean little girl, Amanda, who was in that picture with my daughter. And they also have a foreign exchange student, another Asian student in their home. They just bless her. They bless. So I wanted to bless her. So I went downtown LA. I talked to my friend David, and I said, I need your little Persian Jewish fingers to find me a nice gift for my sister-in-law. He goes, oh, what's her style? Call my wife up. Very basic. He goes, I got the perfect Shabbat candles for her. I said, okay. And I mean, they were, you can't see the beauty of them. They're absolutely gorgeous. You know, our Kiddush cup came from a very similar kind of style. But anyway, I bought her the Shabbat candles, the holders. I brought candles from my home. And she had everything else ready and going. And then we got challah bread in, of course we're in New York, you can get challah bread everywhere. But I found an Israeli-owned market to get challah bread. And so we actually had Shabbat dinner on Friday night because we got in Friday morning and just hung out, schlepped around town a little bit until it was time for them to get off work. And my wife brought her head covering for her. And doesn't it look natural on her? It's just like she's been doing it all her life. She goes, you know what? A lot of my friends are Jewish, and we always keep Shabbat and different things. And he goes, I've always wanted to have my own Shabbat candles because something in me wants to honor this. And in fact, I want you to take a picture because I want all my Jewish friends to see this.
Yeah.
So I had to put this on Instagram and Facebook. I had to. I couldn't hold back. And so this is my sister-in-law, Rosalind, and she's such a blessing. So watch this. The last day of my trip, she found these very unique Shabbat candles that I lit last night, but it has 3. So I'm watching a video of Italian and Sephardic Jews, and I found out, especially for feast days, the Sephardic Italian Jews would have a 3-candle holder for Shabbat because the middle one is a shamash. So they treat it like Hanukkah because it was always something they had to hide to light their candles. So to throw everybody off, they made 3. So it wouldn't look like the 2 Shabbat candles. And they needed a helper, so they put a shamash candle there like Hanukkah, the extra candle. So the one in the center is the one you use to light the other 2. I didn't know this was from the secret Jews of Calabria and Sicily and Spain until I watched this video yesterday. I literally jumped out of my skin. If I could have, I would have. And I jumped. I said, "Babe, you will not believe." That's what I call my wife, babe. Babe, you will not believe this candle holder that Rosalind got us. She was like, so she goes, "Oh my gosh, me and Amanda saw it. We're like, we have to get it for you. We just know it's so special. Something about it. It has the 12 tribes of Israel. I should have brought it this morning. 12 tribes of Israel around the bottom. It's made in Israel on underneath. It has Shabbat Kodesh on one side and Yisrael on the other inscribed. So it says Holy Sabbath and Israel, made in Israel with the 12 tribes around. And this is only found among the Sephardic and Italkim, the Italian and the Sephardim, the Italian and Spanish Jews, because they had to throw everybody off. And they didn't want it to look like Shabbat candles. So this is the way they come up with it. You can see the 12 tribes right around here. And this beautiful turquoise stone that's in the center you can't see in the picture. But I was so blessed to keep Shabbat last night that way. And it's so funny because this is also the 12 tribes around here. So it's like I have my little tabernacle and there's the 12 tribes around it. And the menorah, get it? You get it? Little things like that. Now, I thought that was good. But it got better. You ready? You got better. I got a chance to fulfill a dream of mine. I went to Shearit Israel. I went to the place of the first Jewish congregation in America. This is no joke. This is the first synagogue which started in 1654 into the 1800s of only Spanish and Portuguese Jews, the first Jews of America. Because 1492 is when the Spanish Jews, after that, they started coming in, trying to find locations. Flip the numbers, 1942 is when the Ashkenazi or German Jews came because of the Holocaust.
Oh my.
So 1492, 1942.
Wow.
And was Christopher Columbus Jewish? I'll share that later, another time. Another message, it will be coming. I will be sharing all these secrets. Here's another angle. I'm standing right up at this picture and I'm taking a picture. Look at all of the cameras. Because people try to desecrate the synagogue. It's a landmark in Central Park. It's a landmark. It's absolutely amazing. Look at the way it's built with the Corinthian columns. It's built. It's like you know, I mean, it's, where are we at? Library of Congress? Where are we at? The where are we at here? I mean, this is a synagogue? Yes. So, even though it's no longer that synagogue, it's now Ashkenazi. This is the congregation that meets there. Congregation, Sharei Tzedek. And here we have the gates of righteousness. So, Sha'ar, right? And Sha'arim Sha'arei Tzedek. Rabbi Yonah Geffen. Jonah, right, which means dove. Geffen, which means a vine. Makes me think of the olive branch and the dove. But in case this is the grapevine. So that's what his name means. Michael Firestone is the president, and they're looking at Parashat Shoftim, because they literally meet. I wanted to come back for it, but the minyan was at 7 p.m. on Friday night, and then Saturday morning services at 9:30 a.m., children's services at 11 a.m., Elul class. We need to have an Elul class. Wouldn't that be cool to have an Elul class? They have a Elul class. That's the month we're in with Rabbi Jonah. So now obviously they're doing the 30 days of Elul. They're basically doing a class on that. Then Saturday afternoon service is at 6:45 p.m. because they have for Hamotzi Lechem. So welcome to Esther Azar, Director of Family Engagement. Kiddush is sponsored by September birthdays and anniversaries. If you believe you can destroy, believe you can repair. Rabbi Nachman. What is this month about? Repair. Tikkun olam. It's about repairing your ways. Okay?
Amen.
Okay, let me say the benediction. You ready? I'm scared. All right. You guys ready?
Yes.
Let's take a look at a little commentary that I wrote. You guys know I've been writing a lot of Bible college curriculum. This is part of it. And we are going to take a look at Parashat Tetse with fresh eyes. The Father in heaven created a world filled with people that he desired to show his eternal love to. I mean, you can say amen to that.
Amen.
He also formed within each person the innate ability to fulfill their highest goals and potentials for the purpose of fulfilling his plan. Key, his plan. This divine desire is accomplished through the Father's heavenly blessings that he pours upon all his earthly children. It's an expression of his amazing love for us and all humanity. In fact, it's God's goal for everyone that is within his covenant to be favored with covenant blessings to meet all their needs. This kind of blessing overflows into our families, it affects our faith, and it even reshapes our communities. Sometimes we assume blessings can be weighed on the scale like money, or attained by financial gain or business prowess. Actually, the Bible describes the blessing as something completely different. Within a family, the blessing was pronounced over the children by the father, and a double portion of blessing and birthright was bestowed upon the firstborn. Who? The firstborn. The double portion meant he was responsible for making sure that his family and siblings remained within the covenant rights of blessing when the father was absent or deceased. This included using the double portion of his inheritance to buy his younger siblings out of slavery as their kinsman redeemer if they owed a credit for a debt unpaid. So the question is, what is the biblical concept of blessing the firstborn, and why did so many of the biblical patriarchs wrestle and fight for the right to have a blessing bestowed upon them? Think of Jacob and Esau. What did it mean to walk in the blessing of God? Or more importantly, to walk without it? The best way to describe the blessing is to view it as an empowerment from God, which allows an individual to fulfill their highest potential. The blessing enabled men and women to go beyond human achievement or ability and to even access divine right or authority under God's providence. This was the special blessing and divine right of who? The firstborn. So it would go from the firstborn and trickle down to the youngest, or one who was eligible to take that right. So let's take a look at Deuteronomy 21:10. I'm going to breeze through this to save time. When you go out, or Tetse, to war against your enemies, and Adonai your God hands them over to you to take them captive, suppose you see a captive, among the captives, a beautiful woman, and you desire her and would take her as a wife for yourself. then you are to bring her into your house, and she must shave her head, trim her nails. Remember all that pagan lifestyle? It's going to be shaved right off. Verse 13 says, and remove her captive's clothing, then sit in her house, sit Shiva, and weep for her father and mother a full month. After that, you may go to her and become her husband, and she will be your wife. And if you are not pleased with her, then you may send her off wherever she wishes. But you must certainly not sell her for silver. Treat her as a slave. You may not treat her as merchandise. Wow. Since you have humiliated her. Suppose a man has two wives, the one loved and the other unloved. Did you hear that? Suppose a man has what? Two wives. Look at the Torah. The Torah is talking about a parable here. Suppose a man has two wives. One loved and the other unloved. That sounds like a grandpa telling it to his kids. You know, hey kids, let me tell you a story. And all of a sudden, I sound like that comedian. What's his name? Gets no respect. Let me tell you a story. Rodney Dangerfield. Let me tell you a story. No respect. Come on. He says, and both the loved and the unloved bear him sons. But it happens that the firstborn son belongs to the unloved wife. Notice that. It says in verse 16, now on the day that he lets his sons inherit what he has, what does he let his sons do? Inherit what he has. What does the sons do? The sons inherit what he has. All his possessions go to the sons, right? Yep. He must not treat the loved one's son as firstborn in place of the unloved one's son who is the firstborn. Amen. So he's not to favor one over the other because he loves her more, therefore he'll treat her child better. Right. He treats the firstborn like the firstborn. Rather, in verse 17 it says, he must acknowledge the firstborn, the son of the hated one. Wait a minute, hated? I thought we weren't talking about hate here. We're only talking about being unloved. What does it mean to hate? It means to love less. Right. Now we know the difference of hate. God hates certain things. He loves less. He loves us, but he has to love less because of sin. It takes away a part of who we are. Right. He can't love that part of us. Think about it. He loves us, but he doesn't love the sin in our life. So the more sin that takes up our life, the less he has of us. Amen. So he has to love less of us because we don't have as much to give anymore. Right. Did you catch that? Yeah. Like for instance, I love my daughter, but when she's not telling the truth, I don't love that. Right. I love her. But after a while, I keep seeing the pattern. Honey, this has got to stop. I can't take you to Yoga Land today. Mommy said you need to clean your room, and you were supposed to clean your room, and you told me you were going to turn in your homework, and you didn't do your homework, or you didn't turn it in, so I can't reward that. As much as I love you, I cannot reward that disobedience with the same way I'd love you if you were obedient. I want to, but I can't. Your actions lock me out of blessing you. Oh, yeah. You don't turn my hands, but I refrain from using my hands to bless or lay my hands on that which is cursed. Right. You can't curse what God has blessed, but you can't bless what God has cursed either. Wow. Now look at what the firstborn is supposed to be. He says, rather, he must acknowledge the firstborn, the son of the hated one, by giving him what? Double portion. Now here's the Torah telling you, you have to give it to him. You have to give. It's a mitzvah to give the double portion to the firstborn of all that he has, for he is the first of his vigor, his strength. That's your koach. That is his strength, his ability. The right of the firstborn is his, the first of his strength. The first child gets all his strength. You know what happened to Rachel? Or actually, yes, Rachel, when she had her second child, Benjamin. She wanted to name him Benoni, son of my strength, which we translate as son of my suffering, because you took it all. Yeah. You made me weak when I gave birth to you, so you took my strength away. And really, the father said, no, we're going to call him Benjamin, son of my right hand. Because the right hand is the firstborn.
Wow.
Did you just catch that? The right hand is the firstborn. Firstborn doesn't refer to just being born first. It's the one who's in charge with the right to sit at the Father's right hand. They have right hand authority.
Yep.
I don't pass it to the left, I pass it to the right. Left is submission, right is authority. The wife sits on the left in submission, the queen. The right is the son, who's the prince. He gets the right hand of authority. You always knight with the right hand. You bless with the right hand. Not the wrong one, but the right one.
Yeah. Yep.
Left and right. Yeah. You'll catch that later. So, Genesis actually is the origin of this command, as all Torah commandments usually are. Right? Look what it says in Genesis 29:30. Jacob, Yaakov, also went to Rachel and indeed loved Rachel how much? More than who? Than Leah. So he served him for yet another 7 years. There he did 7, now he's doing another 7. Boy, this is like time here.
I know.
And this is just to get married. That's not, people feel like they're doing time when they are married. But actually, they're, I heard a woman say, oh, are you going to get remarried after, she's been divorced, or she was a widow now. She goes, oh, no, I did my time. I thought it was a little sad, but it's so sad that a lot of people see marriage as doing time. Well, here's a guy working for the time, to have time with this girl. Right? And so we see here, it says in verse 31, now Adonai saw that Leah was what? Unloved. She was what? Unloved. So he opened her womb, but Rachel was unable to conceive. Leah became pregnant and gave birth to a son and named him what? Reuben. Reuben, or sometimes just pronounced Reuven. Because she said, for Adonai has seen my affliction. He has seen. Reuben means to see, a son. Surely now my husband will love me. Why will he love me? Because behold, I gave him a son. He sees a son I gave him. That's the best thing a wife could give as a gift. He gave you a son. You know how long that took me to give you a son? That was 40 weeks worth. It's a lot of investment I had to pay every week, right? A lot of pain. And that's the down payment wasn't as bad as the final payment. The final payment was a doozy. That's called labor pains. That cost me a lot. I gave you my life, a son. When a woman gave a son, she gave the right to the throne. Through you, Sarah will come kings. You ever think about that? A rightful son. She's going to produce the rightful son. I gave you your firstborn. That's what she's saying. I gave you the son who has the right to your inheritance. For a man, it's everything. He was crying about it. He was kvetching about it. I don't have anybody but Eliezer. He's a good house manager, but he's not my son. I'm going to have to give everything to him. It's going to forfeit over to him. What good is all this wealth if I don't have a son? So he says, in reference here to Jacob, it says, for Adonai heard that I am what? Hated. Remember, he loved one more. So therefore, if you love one more, you hate the other. You know what Yeshua says about God?
Yeah.
You either love one and hate the other, because you can't love them both. Because you can't sow 2 seeds in the same soil and reap 100-fold harvest. Just like a man can't have 2 wives and love them 100% because he can't give them 100% of the time, 100% of his money, 100% of his heart. He's always divided. That's why God told the kings don't marry multiple wives. And even, be honest, even the patriarchs had problems with this, didn't they?
Yep.
Of course, before the Torah commandment, the commandment was based upon their life. The ups and downs of their life, the Torah was just coming back and codifying. We're supposed to learn from our patriarchs and our history what's right and what's wrong. Abraham showed us, Isaac showed us, even what they did wrong showed us what not to do. So then Moses had to codify it. God confirmed it. And it says, he heard that I was hated, so he's given me this one also, and his name is Simeon, which means hearing. We won't get into all that. Look at Genesis 48:17. When Joseph saw that his father placed his what? Right hand upon Ephraim's head. Who's Ephraim? His second son. His right hand upon Ephraim's head. It was wrong in his eyes, so that his hand took hold of his father's hand, to remove it from Ephraim's head to Manasseh's head. Who's Manasseh? Firstborn, the oldest. Joseph said to his father, not like that, my father, because this one's the firstborn. Manasseh is the firstborn. Put your right hand on his head. Remember, we take the right hand and put on the head of the firstborn, because the right hand is the person who is the arm of the Lord in prophecy. The son who takes the throne. Right? And so we see a similar concept with the concept of Manasseh being the firstborn, but yet God changed the order, which shows the firstborn is not always just the one born first, but the one who has the right to the covenant. So the covenant did not go to Manasseh, right, in that sense. He did actually reap from it. He's the 13th tribe, if you will. But primarily the firstborn right went to Ephraim because God chose Ephraim. Just like he chose Jacob over Esau, right? He chose Isaac, not Ishmael. So technically, Ishmael's the firstborn, but the wrong wife. Right? So God says everything's got to be in order in my book. What's first is what I call first. Well, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Think about it. The chicken!
Sure.
Because God created the chicken. What came first? Whatever God put first. And anything else, it's always the egg first, then the chicken, right? God's a reverse. God created the chicken first, then he let the chicken lay eggs. That's why God says in the Torah, don't take both of them. Don't take the eggs and the chicken, right? Leave one for posterity. So it says in Exodus 4:21, it says, Adonai said to Moses, when you go back to Egypt, see that you do all the wonders before Pharaoh that I put in your hand. Still, I will harden his heart, and he will not let the people go. You are to say to Pharaoh, this is what Adonai says. Israel is my son, my firstborn. My daughter's memory verse this week, I forget what version it was, but she had to say, there was a voice from the clouds, this is my beloved son, my chosen one. Listen to him. That was the verse she was learning. And I thought it was so cute. It was Luke 9:35, and I had to memorize it with her because, of course, I was helping her memorize it. She would say every day, she'd come to me, Daddy, guess what? She just wouldn't even warn me. She'd just start saying the verse. Because she wanted that look on my face that I was happy that she knew. But this is my son in whom I'm well pleased. I'm well pleased with my daughter because she's coming to Dad to please, to satisfy, knowing that I wanted her to learn this verse and do good at it. She did it. And look what it says, God said of Israel. Israel is my son, my firstborn. So I have said to you, let not my people go, let my son go.
Yep.
Don't you know when you're in bondage, the father is mad that one of his sons or daughters is in bondage? He wants the enemy to let you go. He says, let my son go, that he may serve me, but you have refused to let him go. Behold, I will slay your son, your firstborn. So why did God take Pharaoh's firstborn? Because Pharaoh took his firstborn into slavery. See that? Now, I want to share with you a couple prophetic passages in the Haftarah. And I'm going to start with our Haftarah portion, Isaiah 54:1. It says, sing barren one. Rashi quotes the Targums and says this is referring to Jerusalem, metaphorically. So sing, O Jerusalem, who has not given birth, meaning because of exile. Burst into singing and shout, you who have not travailed. For more are the children of the desolate than the children of the married one. So even though you're in exile, I'm going to bring you out and make you produce even more. Because remember, to not be married meant your husband put you away. And northern Israel was actually also rebuked by the prophets that they would be given a bill of divorcement. Later, Jerusalem or Judea would be told, you need to get right because you've broken God's covenant. And so exile was like a divorce paper being given to the wife, which is found in Deuteronomy 24, this week's Torah portion. God says, I won't divorce you if you just admit your crimes. I'll bring you back. And you'll have more children, meaning you'll be fruitful and multiply. So this is a concept that Israel, even in the midst of all that, they will be fruitful and multiply and have children. And this is the concept of the firstborn. So let me take you to 1 Chronicles 5:1 that recounts the genealogy we looked at with Jacob. And that is the sons of Reuben, the who? The firstborn of Israel. He was the firstborn, but now I'm trying to prove a point that it's not always the birth order. That God can choose to reverse things or change things. He says, Reuben was the firstborn, but when he defiled his father's bed, like in 1 Corinthians 5:1, that we read, 1 through 5, his birthright was given to the sons of who? Joseph, son of Israel. Wait a minute. Joseph, who was his firstborn? Manasseh. But who did his father Jacob bless? Ephraim instead. So watch what it says. The birthright was removed from Reuben, Leah's son, and now it says instead Rachel's firstborn, Joseph, is going to get the inheritance, and he's going to pass it to his firstborn. Watch. It says Joseph, son of Israel, so he is not reckoned as the firstborn in the genealogical records. Reuben, although he's first, is not first. The first shall be last. The last shall be first. In other words, God can change the order based upon us fulfilling his desire. Okay? So watch this. If we go to Jeremiah, BenYa'akov, 31:8. Look what God says of Israel in exile. Remember, a woman divorced is like a woman in exile, right? Or a woman in exile, or Israel in exile is like a woman divorced. Look what it says. With weeping and supplications they will what? They will come. I will bring them, leading them to walk by streams of water on a straight path where they will not stumble. Think of Israel coming into Shuvah during the season for Elul. I am my beloved is mine. I want my beloved, my wife, to come back to me. I want my bride to come back. I want her to be fruitful, multiply again. Come back to me. Don't be in exile. Don't let me put you out to pasture, if you will, with a bill of divorce. Let me bring you back and give you full-fledged rights as my wife so you can produce a firstborn. First fruits unto God. Right? With weeping and supplication will they come. I will bring them, leading them on the way, streams paths, a straight path. Look at verse 9. For I am Israel's father, and Ephraim is my firstborn. Wait a minute. The right was taken from Reuben, given to Joseph. Joseph's firstborn gets the blessing. No, he doesn't. The secondborn does. So Ephraim is now called or pronounced by God to be the firstborn. How did that happen? It's not birth order. It's right of authority. The right of authority is given over to who was not supposed to get it, but who was qualified to receive it. Okay? Hear the word of the Lord, O nations, and declare it in the distant islands, and say, He who scattered Israel, here's Israel in exile, He who scattered Israel will gather and watch over him as a shepherd does his flock. In other words, Ephraim went off into idolatry, but I will gather northern Israel back to me. And northern Israel's tribe or flag was Ephraim. Ephraim, remember that was the entrance of those northern tribes. Their flag was held up, just like Judah in the east, right? Or west? No, east. In the east, the entrance to the tabernacle. Judah was the entrance there. We had also Ephraim as one of the gates. Now, let me close that out with Zechariah 12:10. Because remember, Israel will come what? Weeping. Then I will pour out on the house of David, that's Judah, and the inhabitants of Jerusalem, a spirit of grace and supplication. Remember, it says they'll come with weeping and supplication, right? That means prayer, supplication. So he says, I'll pour on them the spirit of grace and supplication. So why did they come pray? Because the Spirit of God comes upon them and makes them pray. What makes you call upon the name of the Lord? The spirit of adoption that cries, Abba, Father. Sonship. Spirit of sonship, right? Abba is what even the nations, the Gentiles, call God, because they're in their core of their neshama, there's something Jewish about their cry. It's like a Jewish baby calling for their father. And it says, when they will look toward me whom they pierced, speaking of Messiah, they will mourn or weep for him. So actually, the father is talking. They're going to look upon me who they pierced, because they pierced their son, they pierced the father too. You know, when you take my child, you take me. The grief of a father when he loses a child. The grief of a father when he loses a child. It's heavy. It says, they'll look upon me who they pierced. They pierced my heart. Right? But he says, they will mourn for him, or weep for him, as one mourns for an only son, and grieve bitterly for him as one grieves for a firstborn. Who is Yeshua? He is the Father's firstborn, and he is the Father's only son. When Israel sees that they pierced the heart of God by allowing their sin to pierce Yeshua, along with all the nations, All humanity will know he was pierced and wounded. For our transgressions he was bruised. For our iniquities the chastisement of our peace was upon him. But by his stripes we are healed. Amen?
Amen.
So what restores the right of the firstborn? Teshuvah, back to God, repentance. John the Baptist is trying to get all of Israel to come in a immersion, as we have today, of Teshuvah, to return to God during the month of Elul. He was doing it for 30 days in Elul, and he was doing it for 10 days in the 7th month of Tishrei. Why? Because he had to get ready to see God at Yom Kippur. Because we're going to come and encounter God on the feast days. Now, let me show you what Luke tells us as we take a look at the Brit Hadashah, and I close this out. Luke 2:4 says this. It says, Now Joseph also went from Galilee, out of the town of Nazareth, to Judah, to the city of who? David. Wait a minute, we just talked about that. On the city of David, the spirit of grace and supplication will be poured out so that the people of Judea would cry out when they know that they pierced Messiah, and they've also pierced the Father's heart. Right? That's what it says. And in these days, that's what's going to happen. Look what it says. In the city of David, which is called Bethlehem. Now this is the birthplace city of David. So this is not the Jerusalem city of David. This is the birthplace. Because he was from the house of the family of who? David. What's today's date of Elul? 14. What's the numerical value of David's name? 14. What does David mean in Hebrew? Beloved. Ani ledodi vedodi li. What is Elul the acronym of? I am my beloved is mine. Ani ledodi vedodi li. Dodi and David are the same root. It means beloved. Dodi is my beloved. David is beloved. So here is Messiah coming from his loins, who you and I have been accepted in the beloved. Amen. Messiah is the beloved. Amen. Because he is the son of David. And upon God's beloved, he will pour out this blessing. Look what it says. He says, which is called Bethlehem, because he was from the house of the family of David. He went to register with Miriam, who was engaged to him and was pregnant. But while they were there, the time came for her to give birth, and she gave birth to her what? Firstborn son. Oh, wasn't that an illegitimate birth? Not according to temple records. They brought the offering and it was accepted. Nobody questioned it. Because as long as you do what's right by God and come with an offering, it says whatever was in the past is in the past, and whatever is now marked down as present, it's present, and it will be remain in the future. Destroy the temple, it doesn't matter. The priest will carry on with the lineage and know the instruction. They'll say, oh, isn't this the young man? I remember when his dedication was, I remember, this is Yeshua. BenYa'akov, right? Oh, you're all grown up. How old are you, young man? I'm 12. You ever think about the bar mitzvah he was preparing for? They're like, oh, he's ready. Even before it was a tradition yet, it was already accustomed to look at 12 and 13 age turning into manhood. And many scholars have said that was a bar mitzvah for Yeshua when he came to the temple. She wrapped him in strips of cloth and set him down in a manger, since there was no room for them in the inn. Probably Sukkot. Sounds like the most crowded feast day to me. If we look at Romans chapter 8, verse 28, now we know that all things work together for good for those that love God and those who are called according to his purpose. For those whom he foreknew, he also what? Predestined to be what? Conformed to the image of his. He didn't just say of Messiah, of his son. So it must be all about sonship. If you're conformed to the image of his son, you must be coming into sonship. That's right. Women, you're coming into sonship. Because us men have to become a bride. So you can at least become a son. That just means a descendant. That's what that means. It means sons and daughters. It's all within sonship. It's a royal right from the son then to the daughter. And then it says, so that he might be the what? Firstborn among many what? Brothers and sisters.
Amen.
You are the son and daughter of the Most High God, because Messiah is your elder brother and he is the firstborn among many siblings.
Amen.
We are God's family because of what Messiah did.
Amen.
That should get you excited. Because of Messiah, you're a child of God. Because of Messiah, you are now, no matter if you're Jewish or you're Gentile, you're his kids. You're a king's kids.
Amen.
The royal right has been given back to you. Verse 30 says, and those whom he predestined, he also called. And those whom he called, he also justified. And those he justified, he also glorified. In other words, the robe is coming, the ring is coming. Come on, the fatted calf is coming. He's going to glorify you. Because it doesn't matter if you've been in the pig's pen. As long as you have a royal right to be a son or a daughter of the Most High God, he will treat you as his royal priesthood, regardless of where you've been, regardless of what you've done, regardless of how many mistakes you've made. If you come back in complete teshuva back to God, he will put the crown, he will put the robe, he will bring back the glory, he will restore your relationship, he will restore your world, tikkun olam, he will put everything back in order. Oh, I feel the Holy Spirit. He will restore everything when you come back in complete teshuva and you say, I don't want that old life. I don't want to live as a beggar. I don't want to live as a pauper. I want to live as a royal child of the Most High God.
Amen.
I want the right of the firstborn to be restored to God's kingdom.
Amen.
Anyone who takes away Yeshua's right to the throne is coming against the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And one day they will be enemies at his footstool. But anybody that receives him as the right of the firstborn, they realize that all of the inheritance of heaven and earth belong to him. All of heaven and earth is his, and he has a right to give it to who he wants. And guess what? The meek shall inherit the land of Israel, and one day will rule the whole earth in righteousness. I don't know about you, but I'm excited today. Let me close. Galatians 4:22, very compelling passage. It quotes our Haftarah today. For it was written that Abraham had two sons. Remember the Torah? Hey, let me tell you about the story of two sons.
Yeah.
Right? No, let me tell you the story about two wives. It doesn't matter what you talk about. Two trees, right? Two seeds. There's always two of everything. Right? Because it's that picture that the Jewish rabbi is painting, or the father is telling his child when he tells the whole Megillah, and he's telling the child the story so they'll never forget it.
Yep.
So Rav Shalom's a rabbi. He says, hey, let me tell you a story. Let me go back to the Torah. I'll tell you a story. There was a father named Abraham. He had two sons. The kids go, oh yeah, I think I heard this one before. One was a slave, was by the slave woman, and the one by a free woman. Now, who's the slave woman? Hagar. And who's the free woman? Sarah. But one, the son of the slave woman, was born naturally, Ishmael. Naturally the firstborn. While the other, the son of the free woman, was through the promise, Isaac or Yitzhak. And that is the firstborn spiritually.
Right.
Because spiritually he had a prophetic word pronounced over him. Right? A prophetic word pronounced over him, so God would fulfill his word. Just like Jacob with Esau. Prophetic word. Now these things are being treated allegorically, metaphorically, for these represent two covenants. One is from Mount Sinai, giving birth to slavery, and this is Hagar. And so we see that this is a reference to bondage coming from Mount Sinai. We'll find out why. Because of the covenant. For a Gentile to become part of the covenant, he had to be circumcised. Ishmael was circumcised at 13, manhood. 13, bar mitzvah. Did he stay a Jew? No, so he didn't remain part of the covenant because it was legalism from him. My dad's making me do this. I didn't want to do it. In fact, that hurt. I'm mad about it. I have resentment. I have regret. Can you imagine having guilt over your guilt? Right? Or guilt over your guilt, I should have said. That's Hanukkah. But having guilt is very Jewish, isn't it? Feeling guilt. And there's resentment here. And here we see that Hagar is Mount Sinai, metaphorically, in verse 25, in Arabia, and corresponds to the present Jerusalem. So he says the way Jerusalem is acting right now with all its legalism, among a lot of the corruption brought through by some of the Pharisees. He says Israel is acting in bondage where a mixed multitude is being forced to follow these commands, even if they didn't want to do them. Because the image is Ishmael. Ishmael's forced to be circumcised. What's the issue here? Gentiles are being forced to be circumcised in Galatia. That's the issue. Not about following Torah. It's about circumcision. He says, for she is in slavery along with her children. Verse 26, but Jerusalem above. Now what did Rashi say about Isaiah 54? He says it's referring to Jerusalem. So look what Rav Shaul does. He's a good rabbi. He says, well, but Jerusalem, he's relating Sarah as the mother of us all to Jerusalem, the mother of us all. He says, but Jerusalem above is free. She is our mother. What does Isaiah say? Sarah's your mother. Abraham's your father. He says, for it is written, here's Isaiah 54:1. Rejoice, O barren one who bears no children. Rejoice, Jerusalem, remember? Who bears no children. Break forth and shout, you who suffer no labor pains, for more are the children of the desolate than the one who has a husband. In other words, you were exiled like you had no husband, but I'm going to bring you out of exile and you're going to produce even more. Okay? Now, Hebrews 12. So I bring this to a close. Hebrews 12, the last passage. Verse 18, it says, for you have not come to a mountain that can be touched. What mountain is that? Sinai. Remember, Sinai was leading to bondage. Because Gentiles were being made to convert by circumcision as adult males. And it kind of increased in bondage of making people do things they didn't want to do. For you have not come to the mountain, Mount Sinai, that can be touched, to a blazing fire, and to darkness, gloom, and storm, and to the blast of a shofar, and a voice whose words made those who heard it beg that not another word be spoken to them. Look at 22. But you have come to Mount Zion, to the city of the living God, to the heavenly what? Jerusalem, who is the mother of us all. The model is Sarah. The image is the son of promise, Isaac, the true Jew. The spiritual Jew. Not just one physically, but the birthright spiritually. You catching this? Mm-hmm. He says, to the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem, and to a myriad of angels, thousands upon thousands, tens of thousands, and a joyous gathering. Look at verse 23. And to the assembly of the firstborn, who's that? Yeshua, who are written in a scroll in heaven, and to God the judge of all, to the spirits of righteous ones made perfect, sounds like Teshuvah to me, and to Yeshua, the mediator of a new covenant, and to the sprinkled blood that speaks of something better than the blood of Abel. Abel's life was taken by a brother because of an issue of one being received over the other, just like the boys had been fighting all down the family line. Jacob and Esau, Isaac and Ishmael, was just one big fight. So what do we learn from all this? Number one, you learn this. Fill this in. The firstborn receives a what? A double portion of inheritance. Is that just tradition? It's a commandment. We read it today. You have to give the double portion to the firstborn. Number two, the firstborn receives a special birthright blessing. Did they fight for that? Yes. No, don't put your right hand on Ephraim, put it on Manasseh. How about Esau? He took my birthright. This is the second time he's deceived me. No, you deceived yourself and you didn't want it. Stop blaming other people for what you rejected and renounced. Right? Do you want it or not? The birthright is yours. Number three, Israel is Hashem's firstborn, blessed to inherit the promised land. Yep. The big gift of a blessing is the promised land. And that is their inheritance. It's theirs. It's not to be divided. In fact, they should get a double portion. It's much bigger than it is right now. One day they'll get their double portion. Number four, Messiah is declared to be Hashem's firstborn from the dead. Did you ever think about that? He's not only the firstborn from creation, but when he died, until they mourned for him, the king was now dead. Can you imagine what it's like for a father to hope for his son to take over the throne, and then all of a sudden we find out the prince has been murdered? And now the whole nation goes into exile because they have no king. What did Israel go into? Exile because they had no king. There was no king, right? What is this? The 14th day of Elul? 14 generations from Abraham to David. 14 generations from David to the exile. And it took 14 more generations for a rightful son to take the throne. And we've been waiting for Yeshua's second return so he can take up his rightful throne. Amen. Are you getting anything out of this? This is amazing. It's blowing my mind. I thought this was going to be such a simple little message, and oh yeah, they've heard all this stuff before. I'm mind blown. I'm telling you, I'm seeing stuff I never saw before. Yeshua gets the right to the lost kingdom and the right to the throne that has been exiled because of disobedience. And God's saying, I will restore her right to the land. She has a right to the land of Israel. It is her birthright. Let the president hear it. Let the Senate hear it. Let the House of Representatives hear it. Let the prime ministers hear it. Let everybody hear this. It's their birthright. It belongs to the rightful son. Number 5, Messiah's resurrection brings us into royal sonship by his blood. It's the bloodline that counts, right? But not the blood of just Father the Son, but the blood of the Father who gave his Son. Because Messiah's blood is the only royal blood that restores the royal right that Abraham didn't even understand fully. Moses didn't understand fully, but let me tell you who did understand it. Adam. The whole kingdom was at his hands. Adam was the first created son. Adam was made in the image of Yeshua, the Messiah, because he is the image of God. So therefore Adam, when the first Adam sinned and died, guess what? The last Adam had to come and restore what was lost. So the last should be first and the first should be last, and God could restore the kingdom back. So all in Adam died, but in Messiah lived. So God's restoring the rightful sonship back, and he did that through the blood of Messiah. Normally you're checking the DNA bloodline to find out if you have a right to the throne. We have a right to the throne. It's called the blood of Messiah. That was shed for you and I to bring us out of exile, bring us out of darkness, bring us out of pain and suffering. If you receive that today, will you stand to your feet and give God the biggest hand clap of praise? You have a right to the throne. You have a right to the kingdom. You inherit all things because you have been made a righteous son or daughter. A right to the throne. The authority is given back to you, and in his name, you can lift your hand today and receive the blessing. Will you lift your hands to receive God's blessing today? I know we're in overtime, but I do not apologize. God is too good. We got to give him praise today. Lift up your hands for the blessing. Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'yihuneka. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha. Shalom. Amen. May the Lord Adonai bless and keep you, shine his face upon you, be gracious to you, lift up his countenance upon you, and give you perfect peace. Sar Shalom, the Prince of Peace, the firstborn of creation, the firstborn from the dead, and in whose blood we have a right to the throne. Today, in his name, the right of the firstborn is to him. B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach. Amen. God bless you today. Shabbat Tov. Wow.
Yeshua Meshiach.